Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Most pandemic restrictions to be removed in Trinidad and Tobago on April 4th. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Tuesday 29th March 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. 2 years into the coronavirus pandemic that killed more than 3,700 Trinidadians, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley recently announced lifting most of the COVID-19 restrictions on April 4th. More in this report out of the Twin Island Republic.
We will, as of today, remove much of what we had in place when we were dealing with a more threatening environment in the COVID.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says this country is in a far better place than it was in November, December, when hospitalizations and COVID-19 cases were showing an upward trajectory. Health officials on Saturday, including Principal Medical Officer Dr. Miriam Abdul-Richard, says hospital occupancies are the lowest it has been for quite a while.
This morning, in our hospitals, there are 173 patients and 0 patients in our step-down. And for the first time since April of last year, we have 0 patients in step-down facilities. And this trend has been consistent over the past 10 days or so.
And due to this, Dr. Rowley says on April 4th, safe zones as well as restrictions on rivers and beaches will be removed. He says a level of personal responsibility will now be needed and cautions all citizens to be vigilant.
The United National Congress in Trinidad and Tobago steers clear of opposing the reopening of the Trinidad and Tobago economy as revealed by Prime Minister Rowley on Saturday. However, it says the Prime Minister failed to address critical issues as contained in the Simangal report. Urvashitawari Rupnarayan of TV6 News reports.
Opposition MP Dr. Richard Cicheran says Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley merely skimmed over the findings of the Dr. Terence Simangal-led inquiry into the management of the healthcare system during Saturday's update on the pandemic.
Doctors complained that there was around 20% of the required quantity present in the healthcare system. Midazolam, methylprednisolone, and propofol were also found to be lacking.
Then he says there were acute staff shortages and other constraints suffered by healthcare workers in the country's more dire time of need.
Doctors had to work knowing that their contracts would soon expire. Some were given contracts for 1 month and others were given contracts for 3 months. This created great uncertainty and depressed the morale of these young doctors who were exposing themselves to great risk in fighting the coronavirus. Nurses also had to work long hours in PPE, unable to go to the bathroom and in many cases unable to drink water.
Dr. Cicheran disagrees with the Prime Minister's assertion that he was somehow pressured politically into setting up the committee.
This was the furthest thing from the truth. This was because Trinidad and Tobago's astronomical death rate, #1 in the world for many weeks, and during the height of the Delta surge. The population wanted answers, and they got them. And the blame lies squarely at your feet, Prime Minister Rowley.
He cautions the Prime Minister against celebrating too soon.
We should use this time to implement many of the recommendations of Professor Simangal's committee and spend less time praising your immature, unexperienced, and stargazing health team. Now is not the time for awards, but the time to rebuild.
Dr. Cicheran, who's a medical professional himself, expresses concern over the unavailability of vaccines for the 5 to 11 age group, especially as it concerns children with underlying medical conditions.
The WHO recommended schedule is 2 doses. The second dose being given 4 to 8 weeks after the first dose. Will parents with vulnerable children in this age group have enough time to get their child vaccinated before the start of physical classes?
This, Dr. Sicharan says, should be considered on the backdrop of TNT recording the highest number of Miss C cases in the Caribbean. The new school term is scheduled to commence on April 19th, 2022. Ravishi Tiwari, Rupnarayan, TV6 News.
The head of the Tobago arm of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce and chairman of the Tobago Business Chamber both welcome the changes to the COVID-19 health protocols announced by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley on Saturday. Elizabeth Williams of TV6 News has some details.
The AL Bridge needs to be addressed in terms of the number of flights to allow people access to get to the island of Tobago to enjoy what we call staycation.
Ms. Haddad said high unemployment levels in Tobago must be addressed.
However, we do note that a number of persons are out of jobs and the economy has taken quite a hit, and therefore it's going to be slow. Painfully so, I would imagine, after these 2 years.
Head of the Tobago Business Chamber, Martin George, said Saturday's announcement by the Prime Minister was long overdue.
We have long since called for this, and we have long since said that we need to learn to live with COVID. One way or the other, we need to make that adjustment and to be able to, take responsibility for our lives and be able to still pursue our livelihoods.
Mr. George is also in agreement with Ms. Haddad that more flights need to be added to the air bridge.
And indeed gladdened by the announcement from the Prime Minister. What we would encourage, though, is for the government and the Caribbean Airlines to look at increasing the numbers of flights between Trinidad and Tobago because it is still not yet up to full capacity.
Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Antigua's Foreign Minister Chet Green had some choice words for opposition in relation to gas prices. Jessica Russell of the ABS News reports.
With all the noise they make, you don't hear them give government credit, where APU has not moved the price of electricity by a cent.
Foreign Affairs Minister E.P. Chet Green has hit back at those criticizing the government for the recent increase in petrol prices at the pump. Almost 2 weeks ago, the price of gasoline and diesel increased by over $3. However, the minister says the government has kept the cost of electricity unchanged.
The largest consumer of fuel in this country is APU.
Yes.
Okay? The same fuel price that went up. The government of Gaston Brown, the Labour Party administration, the party that built this country, the party that locked into the people of this country, did not in any way impact or interfere with the price of fuel.
He was speaking on the Brown and Brown weekend radio program. Jessica Russell, ABS News.
Barbados' Prime Minister Mia Mottley, the Caribbean's foremost leader, declares that the voice of Barbados must be at the table in key international fora as she opened an embassy in Dubai as part of Expo 2022.
Prime Minister Mia Mottley made it clear the island has made a determined effort to strengthen its foreign policy to be able to tackle critical challenges like climate change on the world stage.
Your speech this evening set out with absolute clarity and focus what your mission is and what the context against which you will undertake that mission is also. I also want to thank Senior Minister Walker for leading this charge along with UPS. And why? This is historic, yes, because it is the first mission we're opening in the Middle East. But it's also historic for my government because it's the first mission that I'm actually physically opening against the backdrop of a clear change in our approach to development and foreign policy. And it is perhaps appropriate for me very briefly to indicate to you that it was very clear to our government from its election in 2018, particularly against the economic backdrop that we inherited our responsibilities for management of our nation, where the only way to achieve prosperity for our people is through growth.
During her trip to AUE, Motley also announced a partnership between Barbados and the X Prize Foundation, a nonprofit organization that designs and hosts public competitions intended to restore the world's corals. Motley says the initiative will help to stem the tide of destruction of the world's corals by 2030.
That very shortly, a partnership between the government of Barbados and X Prize will see a commitment to working to restore the coral reefs of the world. For if we can come together and raise the $20 million necessary for the prizes, that will allow for persons to rebuild coral reefs over 3 hectares, according to the work that they're doing across 3 different coral species, we believe that we can begin to stem the tide that will see the destruction of the majority of the world's coral reefs by 2030 if we don't act together as one. So I use this opportunity today to say to us, let us come together and save our planet Earth, because it relies on us as human beings making those sensible choices day by day if it is going to work.
Meantime, Barbados must once again establish a national bank to help nationals develop their country.
That's the view of APP candidate for St. Michael's Southeast, Reverend Dr. Patrick Tannis. While addressing the party's supporters during the party's political meeting at the George Lamming School on Sunday, Tannis lamented that a previous BLP administration failed the island when it allowed the Barbados National Bank to be sold back in 2003.
How many of you remember the Barbados National Bank? Remember that? As an ordained minister? May the bank rest in peace because it's dead. Those of you who want tissues, who want to cry, can cry now. I permit it. None of the minutes. It's over. Who killed it? The current administration in a previous version. It dead. Barbados is the only Caribbean nation without a national bank. Barbados is the only nation that does not have a national bank to support the people of Barbados. Why? Because the bank was sold by politicians. Nobody in the ABP did it. We didn't do it. It gets sell. And let me tell you, without a national bank, in this current world that we live in, we got problems.
Tannis raised concern that the island's reliance on overseas financial institutions to conduct the majority of its daily transactions leaves Barbadians at the mercy of foreign banks.
Because if you're going to default on your debts and anger the banks that have determined to have wanted at that time to do business in Barbados and accept your debt, and then you default on those banks and insult them and aggravate them, what will happen is that the banks will take it out on who? On me, on we, on us. What are they going to try and do? They might even try and leave this place. We will suffer.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.